Hello, everyone, and welcome to the IEEE Young Professionals webinar. Uh, I would like to introduce today's speaker, Corey Atkinson, from Dimensions of Leadership. He's a leadership and performance specialist. However, before I introduce the speaker, I have some announcements. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Matthew Carius. I am a webinar specialist with the MGA Young Professionals Committee. I am also the Vice Chair for the Toronto Young Professionals Affinity Group. And just for all of you listening, IEEE Young Professionals will be hosting monthly webinars in 2014 on effective communication and leadership and many more topics. Audience participation. During the webinar, please type any questions you have in the questions box below your screen. You can actually vote for other people's questions, and of course, the questions that gets the most votes, I will be asking first. Hopefully, all questions will be answered following the webinar during a 5-minute Q&A session. During a 5-minute Q&A session. Also, new name, new feel, new look. We were previously called Gold. We are now called the IEEE Young Professionals. IEEE Gold was not instantly recognized as a Young Professionals Affinity group. And now the new name makes it easier to find information and benefits relevant to IEEE Young Professionals. And the rebranding has tremendous success, namely networking mixers in Toronto with over 150 attendees. Also in Central Texas section mixer at the International South by Southwest Festival in March. And of course, you can see all these recent success stories on our Gold Rush blog at the URL shown below. Connect with us online, please. We have 2 other products, IEEE Mentor Center, which I'll be talking about at the end of the webinar, and Resume Lab. You can also connect and follow us online at the URL shown there and the email shown there. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. We also have a LinkedIn page, and of course, all of our webinars are going to be posted on our YouTube channel shown there, IEEE Young Professionals, which you can view after the webinar. Now, to introduce today's speaker, Corey Atkinson is in fact a leadership and performance specialist. He has extensive experience in leadership, client services, and business development. He focuses on supporting others to become great at what they do. And this is a follow-up from a webinar held in May, Leadership Excellence Part 2. Corey's going to have a 6-part series with us. And they all focus around on key steps to personal, team, and organization. So from that, I'm going to send it over to Corey, and thank you all for participating in this webinar. Corey?
All right, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. And as Matthew said, today's focus for the next 20-25 minutes on how do you lead a world-class organization? What are the steps involved in doing that? And it's not an easy one. So let me begin by first welcoming you all here. If you have a piece of paper or pen, please take your notes or your tablet, as there's quite a bit of things I'd like to share to get all of your minds thinking differently about what do we mean by leading a world-class organization. So step 1 is, of course, some perspective, some context. And that context I like to give people is in the form of a bit of a quote that I came across many years ago, and it's very timely in where we're doing. The quote is this: if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. And this is by General Eric Shinseki, Chief of Staff, U.S. Army, many years ago. And I thought it was interesting because that's really what leading a world-class organization is about, understanding that you have to change or else you will be left in the past, you will be left behind. So with that in mind, what we're going to look at is leading world-class organizations and what are the key steps? What are the 4 things that you should take away from that? And to make it simple for all of you, these are them. To lead a world-class organization, you have to do 3 things. 1, anticipate. That has to be on the top of the minds of not just the leaders, managers, CEOs, but as well as the performers, the employees, maybe the frontline people doing the work with the clients or customers. Then you have to communicate. You have to be able to get what's in your mind down to your mouth, across the noise and filters to that other person, and make it clear. And third, the two-step process, we must align and act. We must first get focused, much like an arrow, and then shoot so that we hit the bullseye. So with that in mind, let's take a look at how do we do these things to lead a world-class organization, or better, what are world-class organizations doing that really resonates with anticipate, articulate, align, and act. So the first one, when we start here, we start with the first one, anticipation and talking about change. And when I talk about anticipation, we really have to understand the world that we're in today and all the things that go on in our busy, hectic lives, such as global teams, health and wellness, work life balance, organizational loyalty. These are the challenges that face leaders at all levels across all four corners of the globe. And if we're not on top of them, they will really bring us down. As you can see, even just in our entertainment world with what Netflix has brought to the table. Now anybody can be a star. You do not have to go to Hollywood because there are so many more outlets for directors, producers, and so forth to get their ideas from idea to paper to on the little screen and maybe even the big screen. So what do organizations think about? What are the questions that they have to ask themselves to really get clear on how to move forward? So here's some of the things that I would share with my groups that I work with when I help them think about the world wide web of leadership. And that's this. Are our leaders doing what it takes? Do they have the capabilities? I mean, we are more stressed than we've ever before. If you've seen the Forbes results from 2012, 70% at least, I think it was actually 65% of global workers do not even enjoy going to work. So do we have the capabilities? The second part of it all, everyone, is can they do it? Can they drive a global expansion? And it doesn't have to be necessarily around the world, but even in your territory. Do they have what it takes? Third, can we get our people there? And are we ready for changes? Are we ready for curveballs as they come down the pipeline? And lastly, how do we keep people engaged and retained? How do we keep the people we need? So these are the challenges of this worldwide web of leadership that we have to ask ourselves. And world-class organizations are always thinking about them. They're always thinking what's next. So the first place they do to anticipate is they get clear on what type of leadership they need so that they can, of course, grow and prosper. And the first one is this. Oh, there's another one there. But the first one that they think about is this. They really understand the different types of leadership that is out there. And to make it simple, from what I do in the dimensions of leadership, is we teach organizations the three key aspects of great leadership: strategic leadership, operational, and visionary. So the question I have for you as listeners today is, what's the difference between the three? How do you define strategic, operational, or visionary? Well, I've got some ideas on it, and feel free to make your notes or ask your questions. And the first one, of course, is when I say strategic, I say that's about puzzles. And can you put the puzzles together and really make things work? Your classic project management and having the vision, having the idea, but then being able to see it down the road, see it before it happens, right? You got your operational, which is where we spend a lot of time, most of us, our deadlines. We got to get things done today, yesterday, last week, 2 years from now. A lot of us live in that world. There's nothing wrong with it. It makes things get done. It helps us get things done. But of course, we could miss out on a few things. So what world-class organizations do is they make sure there's some time spent on a regular basis in this world of being visionary and seeing the networks that need to be strengthened. And I'm not talking even necessarily from a IT point of view, but even the networks of connections, much like our presentation today, where we've got people on here from around the world. That's a huge network. So when it comes to visionary leadership, world-class organizations do the math, right? They see that there's sort of like three steps. There's the organizational perspective, there's the work group, department, and then there's the individual. And they understand that different types of leadership have different types of activity, right? Level one is very observable. What is the organization doing? We make cars, we create an experience, we sell coffee. Level two is the behind the scenes, the thoughts, and somewhat sometimes observable activities, right? What are the departments doing to help them make their cars as effectively as they can? What are they doing to make sure that where the beans are harvested and are transported hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away, so that when you and I walk into that store, we can order the coffee we want? But the part that world-class organizations do is they think about the VABs, the values, assumptions, beliefs, and expectations of the performer. It's not easily observable and only partly conscious. So world-class organizations spend a lot of time at level 3. They understand that to move things forward, it starts with these 4 things. So when we look at them, these are the lowest common denominators. See, leadership level 1, when you talk about the organization, is an aim for movement. We want to hit these markets. We want to tackle this project. We want to be able to get these customers. Level 2 seeks engagement. That's where we try to make sure that everybody within the organization, from the left side of the department to the right side of the department, from their offices in Canada to their offices in South Africa, are all connected and doing what they do. But the lowest common denominator is the performer. And are they being rewarded? Dan Ariely, Dan Ariely, a professor of psychology about 4 years ago, did a great TED talk about what makes us feel good at work, and really highlights the importance of rewarding our performers. You see, and when you reward them, you tap into their values, their assumptions, their beliefs, and their expectations. And of course, this inspires greater performance and leads to enhanced customer satisfaction, both internally and externally. So where do we go from this? So how do we make this work? What are the things that we need to think about so that we can get there? I always like to say, what does a leader, he or she, have to do to guide their ship, right? What do they have to do to get where they want to go? So what world-class organizations do is they do a lot of thinking. They anticipate and they think about what's coming and where they need to be. And that's always a conversation, not just at the end of the year, but on a regular basis. And they do it in such a way that they answer a couple of big questions. Leading world-class organizations require constantly thinking differently about the performance within the organization, as much as you spend time thinking about your profits, your targets, your product. And what they do is they ask big questions. They ask questions like these ones, for example. And these are just a few that we could get into. But I always like these ones because they get people thinking. The first one is, what plans do I have for each of my performers to grow? Is there a clear plan of where we're going? And yes, we do need to have it two-sided. The performer needs to be ready to ask that question, but the organization needs to be thinking about that. And there's quite a few, your Deloitte and Touches that I know from my own experience, who spend a lot of time on developing their accountants and their specialized services. They spend a lot of time on their leadership growth. Another big question they have is, who else should be in on these plans? They realize that they can't do it on their own. They realize that it's a team game to support one another, and they make sure to get people engaged. They make it challenging and they make it creative. And then one of the other big questions is, am I spending enough time on managing the pipeline? If I'm not spending time managing this pipeline, this funnel, this resource, I'm going to be in trouble. And world-class organizations do this. They keep these things in mind, and they keep them happening on a regular basis. So anticipation is really about thinking differently, and it requires you sometimes just to have those deep conversations to get you thinking, where does the organization need to be, and what individuals do I need to support to get there, not as much as just what does the organization need to do. And a classic example of this one is Royal Bank of Scotland. The Royal Bank of Scotland has gone as far as, over the past couple of years, due to my research, they now promote linking in within the organization. And what they do is they get people who, after they've been on board for 4 to 5 weeks, new hires, new positions, and they get them to connect with other people in the organization that might not even be within the office. They might not even be even in the same department. But they get them and they have the person come in and they ask Janice, how's it going over the past 4 weeks? Janice says it's going fabulous. And then her manager will say something like, well, Janice, there's a couple of people I want you to connect with. I'd like for you to connect with Matthew. He's working he's doing a secondment in our France office, and we'd like to go down there and really spend some time understanding what they do there. We want you to connect with Valerie. Valerie's is doing a project in partnership with another bank, and she's not in our department, but it's good for us to know. And they link their clients in, so, or not even their clients, sorry, their performers into one another. So now the person walks out feeling more valued. They're important, and when people feel important and valued, they perform. That is simple, basic human relations. So that's what they do there at that level. And the question is, well, some people say, well, Corey, this sounds great, and it's nothing new. I've heard this before, but where does the rubber meet the road? And you'll find that when you do this kind of thing, you're going to have impact in two specific areas: talent management and strong development, personal professional development. And as you can see from the title of the screen, leadership impacts the bottom line. You'll see that impacts the bottom line in a couple of various areas. I've got 6 here, from financial performance to products to satisfaction, retention of quality employees. And through the source that I found, organizations that spent time on these areas saw some dramatic increases over a 2 to 3 year period in late 2008, 9, 10. Those that spent time on talent management and development within the organization found that they increased in their results in these areas quite significantly versus those that did not spend time on these areas. They saw increases in productivity by 21%. They saw retention of quality employees by 27%. And these are a lot of numbers, but there are 3 that I'd like for you to keep in mind, right? The first one is financial performance. By just taking the time to manage talent, their financial performance went up. Maybe they cut costs. Maybe they were able to be more efficient. Their numbers went up. Satisfaction. If you don't have customers, you don't have a business. And obviously, it's not just your external customers, but it's your internal customers. And when you're keeping quality employees, that saves a lot of headache down the pathway. So that's step 1, everyone. Anticipation in terms of where do you want to go. Now you got to get into the next part. And that, of course, is, can you articulate it? Can you let people know that you're serious about this? And one great way to do that is to keep this in mind. I say oftentimes, focus on focus on what's most important to your clients, right? Where is it? Sorry, I just got mixed up here. Focus on, there we go. Focus on these things here. Focus on what matters most to your people. Ignore everything else. By Phil Daniels, a Sydney executive. And I found this very interesting because that's what it's all about. If you focus on what matters most to your people, you are going to be doing just fine. And what I mean by that, of course, I'm talking about, can you articulate it? Can you communicate it? You can't just know it in your mind. You got to be able to share it. And so here's the issue. In the world today, we've got many different challenges facing us. We've got, of course, we have many different learning styles, generations, mindsets, attitudes. And for us to be successful in organizations, we have to be able to work with different people from, say, 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, from 12 to 3, and from 4 to 5, and do that on a regular basis. So we really have to understand that we got to take care of our people. And one of the things that I would like to show people is that even over a 20-year period, how the difference in terms of market value has changed. And you'll see here, right, in intangible assets versus tangible assets. So in 1992, over 20 years ago, the focus was mostly on, of course, a 50-50 split. As recently as just over 12 years ago, it went down to, of course, a bigger percentage on the intangibles, and then, of course, it's even bigger up and towards just 2 years ago. And this really makes a big difference. This is really telling us that we have to take the time to focus on what appears to be the new competitive frontier, which, of course, is our people. And we got to think, no, do organizations explicitly show their people that they're important? And so with that in mind, there are a couple of things we got to keep in mind, right? We have to realize that this is not going to be easy. We have to understand what we're dealing with. And to do that, we've got to understand the leadership errors we've gone through. And we've gone through many. We've, and just within the past 200 years, even not even down to 100 years, we've gone through the agrarian economy, which is all about produce. We've gone through industrial revolution. We've even gone through the information age. And where we are now, everyone, in terms of what world-class organizations spend time, is on what is called the experience economy. And once again, it comes down to the values of each performer in the organization. What type of experience are they having? And if you notice, organizations want to be on the best places to work. Look at Google. Google is not famous more now for changing our vernacular in terms of just Google it. They're now famous for the workplace that they provide for their employees. That's what they're famous for. So it's the writing's already there, and of course they're going to do that's going to help them attract the best and keep the best. So we've got to start thinking as what do we value? And as world class organizations, these are the kinds of things they ask themselves on a regular basis. As a leader, as a professional, what do you think your people, your team members, or performers value from a career or work perspective? And there are many. You know, it's more than just money and time. It's achievement opportunities. It's a good salary. It's being in the know. It's challenging work. It's even job security could be the simplest thing. Sometimes it's even just being responsible in a great work environment. And even all of you that are listening in today, you have to think, what do I value? And that's great, but we have to keep in mind that we're not doing this alone. And most of us, whether we are solopreneurs or we work in a Fortune 500 or we work in a company with over 4,000 employees around the world, we have to keep these top of mind. And so what organizations do, world-class organizations do, is they do that. And they ask the big question on a regular basis, how would you rank this list? And more importantly, not only would they rank it, but more importantly, how would you rank it? And when they understand the values of what drive people, they're able to move forward. And what that does is it gives them some information. It gives them some things to start to think about. And some of the things that you get is data. You get information. You get things like realizing that employees are looking for job growth and learning opportunities, or else they're looking for a new job, right? Is your organization offering the items on these lists to your employees? Are they giving them chances to have job security, but also be responsible and have a challenging workforce and be accountable? And as leaders, how many of these items do we believe are within our control? And these are big questions that we have to ask ourselves, but it gets us thinking, it gets us moving in the right direction. Here's really the bottom line for this point, and it's this one, right? Organizations that want to be successful here in the 2010s and beyond will be those who manage values and maximize talent effectively. And that's really what it is. And to do that, you must be able to articulate it. You must be able to keep people on the same path. So where do we go from this, everyone, in terms of articulation? The question is simple. Does your organization clearly, effectively link organizational vision, mission, and values and goals to team and individual objectives? I don't know if we can all do it on a consistent basis, but world-class organizations do it. It might not be every day, but it is definitely a part of their agenda. So that's the piece of the puzzle that we have to keep in mind. Are we doing it? And as we wrap things up today, everyone, we've got to get to the last part. Once you're able to articulate, once you're able to anticipate what's going on in your organization, you then get people aligned, and then you act. And without sort of trying to make sure this is very clear for everybody listening today, it's this: leaders do people, period. That's their focus. And those that understand that are able to move faster with greater efficiency and speed. So what does that mean? Well, to align your actions, you have to do a couple things. First, you got to realize that value equals talents. And there's just a couple of stats I have here. Value of top performers: 2 to 4 times the performance of an average employee are what top performers will bring to you. Google says one of their top software engineers can be worth 300 times more than an average employee. And the variance in performance increases with the complexity of the job, and also top talent tends to cluster together. So these are all some important takeaways that we got to keep in mind as we move forward in this pathway to becoming a world-class organization. Are we keeping these things at the top of our mind, and are we making them real? And one of the things that I would like to share with people is this one, right? Is not only does it make a huge difference, but you'll find that when you identify and develop top talent, there's some things that can happen, right? When you have a low complexity job, an average performer will be able to do it at 100%, while a top performer can go 150% better than that, right? Or 50% more than the average. You can see in productivity in a medium complexity, a top performer can be 85% better, and of course it goes on. And those are important stats to keep in mind, but again, they take some work. They really take a lot of alignment and asking the right questions. But really, here's the issue, right? Is if you don't manage the talent, if you don't align and act, Cost of losing talent can be 1.5 times burden on the salary. Cost of a poor hire can be $300,000, 300,000 impact on the organization, right? Impact of a bad fit hires, 40% fail within the first 12 months, and the cost per day, $1,000 a day for operating without a key player. So those, of course, are taken from different perspectives and industries, but the point here is that there is some math to it, and it can impact your results. So what do we have to do? How can we make this work? And there's one thing that world-class organizations do well is they manage their pipeline. They manage the flow and the growth and the process of their leaders. But they don't just focus on their leaders, they make it available to everybody. I'm not sure if you even heard as recently as earlier this year, Starbucks out of the States now offers their even part-time workers full-time benefits of dental and so forth. I mean, they're realizing that if we value our employees, they will perform. And you can see the pipeline there, it's constantly moving. This is not an easy game to play. But there are some things that you want to think about in the pipeline. And here's a really sort of great way to look at it. Go from the bottom and work your way up. If you want to manage and grow, here are some of the key areas that you want to start thinking about. Getting results through personal effort. How can you get through results through others? Can you get results through your managers, function, and so forth? And these are all just different ways of looking at a pipeline. Yours will be varied depending on the size and length of your, and breadth of your organization. But organizations watch this and they keep it top of mind because people need to be valued. But what's important here is this: is that the pipeline can sometimes break down. And you'll notice that that if you don't make sure that you're managing the process well, your high flyers will come down, and you'll put them in these positions, as some of us have been there before, and then we'll realize that this really is not for us. And that's something that world-class organizations keep in mind. They notice that there can be certain trouble areas, and then what they do is that they anticipate them, they articulate what needs to be done, and then once again they align, and of course they act. And that really wraps up what world-class organizations do. They manage the transitions. So the pipeline, of course, is a big one. And there are a number of things that one can do to manage the pipeline. And without going into it too much, one book that I've read and I thought really helps organizations do it is this one. It's called Tribal Leadership. And these authors wrote this book about 4 or 5 years ago, and they talk about how organizations work internally to manage relationships with one another. And really a great book for you to check out. Got an audio version and gives you insight into how to leverage natural groups with an organization. And that's just one that I have. So where do we go from here, everyone? Well, here's the bottom line. If you're not aligning, you're not articulating, you're not anticipating, you're going to be in trouble. And you're going to see them here from workforce engagement, external hires, long ramp-up time, and you'll see obviously the bottom line, everyone, is in the ability to execute strategy and take advantage of a market opportunity. So it goes right back to the business. So my last word for the day, everyone: leaders do people, period. That is what world-class organizations do. Hopefully you will have enjoyed this, and you'll realize that there is one last thing to keep in mind, and that is this. Oops, sorry. Growing yourself as a leader, as a team, as an individual, it takes work. It is not easy. It's not always fun, but the results are there for you when you do it. My name is Corey Atkinson. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Matthew. I have some time, 4 to 5 minutes, for questions, comments, or thoughts. Matthew, if you want to jump in, I'm ready for you.
Thank you, Corey, for an excellent presentation. And for all of you watching, you can ask questions now or vote for your for the most popular question. And we do have some right now, and I'm gonna start it off. Laura from the United Kingdom is asking, my manager hasn't ever really talked to me about leadership pipeline. How can I get him to do that?
That's the big question, Matthew. That comes up often, and it's not a big one, right? You go in with the concept of, I'd like to find out more. Is this a topic? And what I'd say to Laura would be, right away, say, listen, I just saw this great webinar the other day, and I'm just curious about where I can go in this organization, and wondering if you could help me, or if there's somebody else I should talk to about this. And you put the question out there, and then once you've got the feedback, you'll know. Some of them might say it's not really our thing, and then you have to sometimes look out for your own career. Others will say, no problem, thank you. I've got so much on my plate that I haven't really gotten the time to talk to you about this. What would you like to see? So there are a number of ways to do it, but the first thing would be just to go and ask and then see where it goes from there. But I always recommend that. Don't wait for them. Take the first step.
Perfect. Another question here from Canada. I was wondering if the percentage of market value in 2012 is 80%, then probably in 2022 or so, it may hit 100%, which would not be the case in reality. What factors may have a negative impact on the progress? Because that's what you were talking about, the progress of these.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a very good valid point. It's not obviously, it's that's the change, and there's going to be a time where it's got to peter out and plateau. I mean, you still need to have tangible assets, obviously, but there's going to be a few things. It's going to be work-life balance is becoming the big issue now, and people will really move towards a place where it's not as much that they're not going to want to be there, but organizations will spend more time on ensuring that their workforce is engaged because they're realizing that when the engaged workforce is not there, they miss out on creativity and how to solve problems quickly. So that 80/20 won't go to 100, but what will happen is organizations that can manage the 80/20 effectively will rise above, they'll attract the best, they'll be able to leverage themselves whether it be financially or even just the way people their loyalty by their internal employees. So hopefully that gives you some insights. That's a valid question.
Perfect. We have a 5 vote question here. It's the one that was most voted for. You mentioned focus on just people and ignore everything else. What is everything else? So don't you think the emphasis is placed on strategy and long-term vision, or is the customer is always right mentality takes precedent over your own workforce? So how do you kind of do that balance?
Yes. To first give that context, I throw that quote out there more to just give us a bit of a shock and awe, and sort of go, wow, I hadn't really thought it's that important, and also because a lot of organizations don't tend to do that. They do tend to, by nature of business, focus on what can be measured. And what if you can measure something, you manage it. And if I can measure how many sales or how many defects or how many projects we're going, it's a lot easier than measuring if Corey's engaged in the workplace or not. And so I'm not at all saying that strategy, creativity, R&D, marketing are not important, but just that make sure we spend more time on how we're engaging our people than just the seasonal Christmas dinner, the barbecues in the summertime, the odd, oh, we haven't done an offsite for about a year. Let's do another offsite with really no connection back to the business. That's really the point there. They're all important, but just those that spend a little more time, I think, bringing the people factor to the table, whether it be HR or sales or customer service or the CEO, will be the ones that will move first. Will move faster quickly. Will move faster with greater effectiveness. Sorry.
Excellent, perfect. I think we have one more question, please. You can add your questions as we continue on this discussion. Here's one. You talked about some of the questions that world-class organizations ask. Are there any other questions that such organizations should ask?
Yes, there are quite a few. The one that when I spend time with organizations, moving them to a world-class perspective, it's what are the roadblocks? What's sometimes the history of what's happened here? Because there's a great quote: if you don't know where you're coming from, you won't know where you're going. And so honoring the past or recognizing what's happened, looking at what's current in terms of the present and creating the tomorrow is that other sort of big question that we have to honor, and that it's not all going to be, for lack of a better phrase, peaches and cream. There will be some challenges. You're going to have to deal with some people that are going to be resistant in the get-go. Is our organization or industry growing, or is it stagnant, or is it dying? All those other factors. But asking where we've come from is another big question.
Excellent. Just another reminder, you can add your questions at any time. So I have one of my own. So Corey, you mentioned that companies, and you mentioned the Royal Bank of Scotland actually teamed up with people in different departments. I've also noticed some of the bigger companies, bigger firms also have what is called a career HR manager or something like that, where they have monthly meetings to talk about growth. So I believe, so are both strategies good, or which strategy would be most effective in building those leadership qualities, learning, teaching experiences, all that, to actually grow people throughout their career?
I think there's no one answer, Matthew. I think that that you have to understand the context of your world, right? So, for example, um, I work with an organization here, Matthew, where when the organization, does installs for dentist office, they install machines, and when they show up, the drivers, they wear golf shirts and black pants. In Europe, they do the same thing, but the drivers show up wearing a tie, right?
Right.
So it's about context. They're still doing the same thing, except that they're thousands of kilometers apart, and because of the context, it's very different. So having an HR career manager is a great idea if the organization can support that, and there's enough people that HR person can be busy enough and make sense, because you don't want to be talking to the person every week about your career. That's going to be a little ridiculous. But if it's so the organization is so plentiful or so large that I'm going to meet with this person every 4 months, that'd be great. But imagine that it's also incorporated into the strategy of just our onboarding process is not just to onboard you, but also sort of launch you. That's also great for what Royal Bank of Scotland has done. And then also there's another issue of, well, why, if we're really serious about this, and the leader of the organization says it's important, maybe the CEO, if the company's small enough, or the vice, the senior people could actually spend that time with their individual. So it definitely depends, but any focus on that, I think, is a step in the right direction. Hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. Excellent,
Mm-hmm.
excellent answer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if there are no other questions, there aren't any showing up on the feed there. I'm gonna switch it over to some announcements that we have. Corey, I would like to thank you for an excellent talk, and I'm looking forward to the remaining of your leadership uh, uh, webinars that you're going to be giving us in the coming months.
Matthew, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Once again, it's Corey Atkinson from Dimensions of Leadership, Corey at dimensionsofleadership.com. If you have questions, comments, thoughts that have come up, by all means, reach out to me. I would be more than happy to help you out. Matthew, thank you again, and IEEE and Mario for having me on. It's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you. Just as a reminder for all the participants, please complete the feedback survey. I'll be sending that out in the coming days. Our next Young Professional webinar is scheduled for July 31st, 2014, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, where the CTO, Chief Technical Officer of Cisco Systems, um, will be giving us a talk, Monique Moreau, on why engineering matters for women. I mentioned before, we have other career-based services to offer all young professionals. IEEE Mentor Center, where we actually put our members into contact with a mentor and in hopes to guide them throughout their career transitions. And of course, Resume Lab kind of go hands in hand, in which people can actually get excellent resume tips. Suggestions for other young professionals, products, and services, please email us or check us out on the web, or put any ideas in the feedback survey we're going to be sending out in the next coming days. And from that, I would like to thank everyone for participating in this webinar. And I'm looking forward to having you all join us next time. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye.